And good morning, everyone, and good evening to our friends who have joined from across. And welcome to this session, which is today is the 15th session in the series of 20 webinars being organized with fund from Global Genes and for financial advocacy for rare diseases. And the focus is today for these webinars is SMA and DMD, which are the most common of the rare diseases and which we have been following up for last 4 decades. अ, तो अभी हम लोग ने ये 15वां सेशन है जिसके अंदर हम बात कर रहे हैं फाइनेंशियल एडवोकेसी की रेयर डिजीज के ऊपर हमारा फोकस है एसएमए एंड डीएमडी टुडे वी विल बी टॉकिंग अबाउट ग्लोबल सिनेरियो एंड वी हैव एक्सपर्ट्स फ्रॉम ऑल ओवर द ग्लोब टॉकिंग अबाउट इट सो वी विल बी फर्स्ट हैविंग a very senior government official from India talking about what is the scenario in India, and then we have representatives from across the globe from who are pediatric neurologists, who are from the pharma, who are from the NGOs. And I will request Dr. Kakuli to kindly introduce the panelists.
Thank you everyone for joining. Thanks for joining in spite of the time difference which we have. Today, thank you Dr. Shefali for the brief introduction. Today we are touching upon the session which is scenario around the world. From India, we have Dr. Swasti Charan. He is the Chief Medical Officer and Director General of Health Services, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, India. Dr. Swasti Charan is currently the Additional DDG and Director EMR in Directorate General of Health Services, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. He is in charge of National Tobacco Control Program, De-Addiction Program, Telemedicine, Pre-Hospital Care, National Oral Health Program, Emergency Medical Relief and Rare Diseases. He has an MD in Community Health Administration from Delhi University. He has been leading many programs in public health in US and Emory University. His area of work, inter alia, many public health issues are integration of health programs for synergistic better implementation of programs and scientific evidence to policy to implementation systems thinking and innovations in healthcare delivery. We have Ms. Parvati Krishnan from USA. She is from Global Gene and is the Alliance Manager for Global Gene. She has earned her MS from Rutgers University and her clinical training from Mayo Clinic of Health Sciences. She has worked as a clinical dietitian at Duke University Medical Center and has gained experience in non-profit world from her role as a patient engagement advocate in the institute. Parvati is a speaker panelist and often serves on national and international efforts to promote patient and caregiver experience. As a mom of two medically complex children, Yash and Ira, Parvati is a passionate in helping others find their voice and messages. We have with us from Malaysia, Dr. Purani Anandakrishnan. Dr. Purani is currently the pediatric neurologist in Hospital Tengku, Kuala Lumpur. She graduated with MBBCH BAO from National University of Ireland. She obtained her postgraduate master's in pediatrics and child health from Royal College of Pediatrics and Child Health UK in 2013. After serving as pediatrician with Ministry of Health, Dr. Purani pursued her subspecialty training in pediatric neurology and was conferred her fellowship in pediatric neurology. Dr. Purani is affiliated to Spina Bifida Association of Malaysia as their global grant trainer. WHO Collaborative Global Network for Rare Diseases as a panel of experts and treats neuromuscular disorders. And she is the panelist for SMA registry in Malaysia. We have with us from Sri Lanka, Professor Jithani is a professor in pediatric neurology in Department of Pediatrics, Faculty of Medicine, University of Colombo. She graduated from the University of Colombo in 1998. Her main field of work relates to pediatric epilepsies and research interests have been most on treatment of infantile spasm. She is the principal investigator of the Sri Lanka infantile spasm study. She is the chair of pediatric task force of ILAE Asia Oceania region and a member of Pediatric Medical Treatment Task Force and member of Equity, Diversity and Inclusion Task Force of International League Against Epilepsy. She is a member of International Collaboration of Young Representative of International Child Neurology Association. She is also a chair of Long-Term Development Committee of the Asia Oceania Child Neurology Association. We have Mr. Alexandro Novartis, Mr. Alexandro from Switzerland, who is representing Novartis. He is region head at Novartis Gene Therapies and is international regional head for Novartis Gene Therapies. He is responsible for building and leading the high performing cross functional organization of the regions of Asia Pacific, including India, Middle East, Africa, Japan, and China, as well as at the individual country level within those regions. Alignment of East and Africa regions to the new international region aligns with broader global Novartis structure. In this role, Alessandro is responsible for leading a team that will introduce innovative gene therapy to market to help babies and their families who suffer from SMA. Previously, Alessandro held positions at Roche, Alexion, and Johnson and Johnson. He joined um, Novartis from Santhera Pharmaceutical, where he held the position of general manager for Italy. We have with us Dr. Anil Israni. He is an Amazonian. He is joining us from Liverpool, United Kingdom. He is a consultant pediatric neurologist and clinical specialty director at Alder Hay Children's Hospital, NHS Foundation Trust, Liverpool, United Kingdom. He is a neurologist and epileptologist, North England Children Epilepsy Surgery Services. He is a lead neurologist for tuberous sclerosis multidisciplinary services in North West England, lead neurologist neurovascular services at Alder Hay Children Hospital. He is a member innovation steering group also, and he is a clinical lead genomic services, neurology, and neuroservices. His areas of interest is complex epilepsy, neurovascular disorders, neurogenetics, artificial intelligence, and machine learning in complex epilepsy, and also he is dealing in neuromuscular disorders. We have with us Dr. Timothy M. Miller. Thank you for joining us again, Dr. Tim. He is a Global Vice President and Therapeutic Area Head, Rare Diseases and Pediatrics. He had served senior leadership roles in both the biotech and biopharmaceutical companies. Passionate neurologist, rare disease patient advocate, gene therapy proponent, and drug development leader. He has more than 25 years of experience. He has been actively passionate with his expertise at a contract research organization level. He strongly believes that he can help to set the modern standards of research, promote initiatives that are foundational for both patients and pharmaceutical development, and productively work alongside key medical and patient expert in industry to positively change the practice of medicine for patients. We have with us from PTC Therapeutics, which was founded in 1998, is a global commercial diversified biopharmaceutical company. We have Mr. Adrian Haig, who is representing from Ireland. Adrian Haig is a senior vice president at PTC Therapeutic International with headquarters based in Dublin, Ireland. Adrian has extensive experience establishing commercial organization and launching therapies for rare disorders and has previously spoken on evolving landscape of novel technologies, most recently at the World Orphan Drug Congress. We also have Mr. Nikhil Jairam. Thank you, Mr. Nikhil, for joining us again from Australia. He is the regional head, Australia and Asia at PTC Therapeutics. He has more than 10 years of experience in working in areas of rare diseases and looks forward in evolving the landscape towards the understanding and management of rare diseases. We have with us Dr. Nisha Venugopal, who is representing India-US Organization for Rare Diseases and which is working to understand financial awareness and accessibility for rare disease community in India. She is the program manager research scientist at Indo-US Share. We have with us Dr. Shefali and Dr. Prashant, who are representing AIIMS. Dr. Prashant is an associate professor at All India Institute of Medical Sciences. His main interest and expertise are immunomodulation and non-invasive neuromodulation in refractory childhood epilepsy, electrophysiology, movement disorders, and CNS tuberculosis. And Professor Shefali Gulati, as we all know, she has excelled in her career and is having more than 370 research publications. She has been contributing towards establishing the DM program in more than 5 institutes. She has more than 25 years of experience. She has envisioned, conceptualized, and faculty in charge of Center of Excellence and Advanced Research for Childhood Neurodevelopmental Disorder. Over to you, Dr. Shifali.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kakuli. And we begin by a presentation from Dr. Swati Charan. Dr. Astha, would you like to share the screen, please?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, sir, for joining. Because we have to start the global scenario from India, and you are leading it in India for the government of India. Thank you so much for joining despite of your busy schedules.
Thank you so much for inviting me to this workshop, and it is my pleasure to give you an overview of what's happening in India for rare diseases. We are, my team who's working right now for rare disease is, I must say, about a year old. Otherwise, we are working, I'm heading a unit called Emergency Medical Relief in DGHS, which deals with the health sector disaster management. So I had in the last 1 year put in all our efforts of the emergency team into looking into the nitty-gritties of the rare disease and what we can do best in an emergency mode of style, which we are already familiar with. And a rare disease, even though we have a policy, the policy is a very new policy. We all know that we had an old policy and we have revised it, and then it is now the 2021 rare disease policy that we are working with. When we start reading about rare disease in the country, we start by saying, I also hear some of the introductions saying that orphan diseases and orphan drugs, which, you know, personally, I do not like to refer ourselves as somebody looking after some diseases which we call orphan. So we should be imbibing all the diseases and all the conditions of the countrymen here. And that is my first statement. They are not orphan and they are not orphan diseases, and we are working for them with all our heart and intentions. As per the policy, we initially, Asta, can you go to the next, please? We do classify the rare diseases based on the availability of the treatment, whether it is one time and based on the kind of treatment, how much fund would be required for treating the treatment, and as per the availability of the treatment modalities for that particular diseases. This was the earlier classification, and I will come to the new guidelines that we have issued about a month ago, where we try to say that, you know, even though we still do have a classification, but from the funding point of view, we have removed this classification in some way that, you know, the fund which would be available for the Center of Excellences for Rare Diseases would be extended to all the three groups. So that's what I wanted to say. And for the sake of discussions, we have group 1, group 2, and group 3 diseases as per the policy. Next, please. These are some of the names which I won't go into the details of the diseases which belong to different groups. And for example, if I understand that some of you are working with Duchenne's muscular dystrophy or the spinal muscular atrophy, we know that they belong to some group, say group 3, and we know why we are there in group 3. And we also know there are some diseases which are in group 1 and group 2, and we also know why these diseases are not in group 3, but in group 1 and group 2. So this is just to give you an illustration. Next, please. Okay, so we all know we are speaking amidst the experts here. We all know that we have some challenges both in terms of diagnosis and also in treatment. And sometimes even when the diagnosis is the technology for diagnosis is available, what happens is, you know, say for example the spinal muscular atrophy, where we need the diagnosis to be done, a treatment to be done and given before 6 months of age. The child would be, you know, shopping from one center to another in their trial, in their, you know, trials to get a proper diagnosis, and that the initial key 6 months could be gone. So these are some of the challenges in terms of timely diagnosis, timely coming of that particular patient to some health facility where the proper diagnostic facility could be there, and also challenges in providing the treatment in terms of unavailability of the treatment, or even when the treatment is available, it is so exorbitant that even with all the resources of the family as well as the available resources of the government, at that point of time may not be enough for making that treatment possible for that. So there are a range of challenges that we have. So we are having some policy directions as given by the policy. So we should be working on a comprehensive preventive strategy. Say, for example, if some patients, some family has a rare disease, and we know that that rare disease has a tendency to be carried upon, in generations to come, then we intervene with a preventive strategy. We may also enable, affordable healthcare. As I say, healthcare, we should also remember that it may not be the whole range of, the whole range of treatment, not just the definitive care. We know for sure that many of the diseases and rare diseases, even when after diagnosis, we are not able to provide them the definitive care. Either we have lost the time when we should have intervened, or either that facility, either that funding which is required for that particular disease is not available at the moment. So what we do is we may end up providing, adding some supportive therapy to the patient, trying to add some quality to the remaining years. So this whole range of healthcare, we are trying to do it through the public health facilities. And for that matter, we have identified, as per the policy, about 8 centers of excellence located across the country. And we also realize that the 8 centers of excellence will not be enough. And we are trying our best to increase the number of centers of excellence, so that, the distance which the patient has to travel from their residence to the center of excellence would be reduced, and also that the overcrowding of these centers of excellence, which otherwise are also treating other diseases apart from the rare diseases, are reduced. We are also focusing our areas in some of the research areas, and we still have we do have additional what are known as Nidan Kendras, who would be focusing more on the research component of the rare diseases. Next, please. So when we talk about the classification of the rare diseases, we realize that some of the diseases also could be newly represented to the ministry. Say we might get a representation from a patient family stating that we do not have this particular disease mentioned in the rare disease policy. Do we have some provisions for doing that? For that matter, we have got what is known as the Central Technical Committee for Rare Diseases, which DGHS is heading, and that has a provision that if a new disease comes out, we discuss among the experts to decide whether that rare disease can be included and extended support, or we include them and say that at the moment, since there is no definitive treatment available for this particular disease, we are not extending the financial support which is given to other rare diseases for which treatment is available. So that kind of provision is also there. And we can go next. Asta, next, please.
Yes, sir. Can you see the screen?
Yeah, next. I can. Can we go to the next, please? Okay, so now, as I said in the beginning, earlier we had a policy of providing rupees 20 lakhs. I think we should have converted this to US dollar when we are speaking to an international audience. But I must tell you that it was extended. It was a bonus amount of rupees 20 lakhs, which would be given through what is known as the Rashtriya Aryoga Nidhi of the government, and it was extended to only the group 1 diseases. And for the group 2, we were thinking that it would be, sought from the state government, because in India, health is a state subject, and so we can provide some from the center, and we can expect the states to provide some for the patients who are suffering from rare disease. So we were thinking that for the group 2 patients, we could source it from the state. And for the group 3, we had created the crowdfunding portal where we expect that any benevolent organizations or individuals can either donate to individual patients, or they can donate to the COEs and provide the treatment from there. We realized that the fund which we expect to receive from the crowdfunding is not encouraging, and although we are trying our best to work on ways on increasing how we can increase the donation through the crowdfunding, we cannot keep on banking to that which has got a certain amount of uncertainty there. So that's why in the ministry we have made our efforts to extend the financial support of increase the financial support, which we have at about 20 lakhs to about 50 lakhs. And the other thing which we have done is, earlier 20 lakh was restricted to only group 1 patient. This time, this 50 lakh per patient is going to be provided to all the 3 groups. So we have not limited it to only group 1 diseases. So any of the rare disease patients, whether they're group 1, group 2, or group 3, will be able to get this financial support through the Center of Excellences. What we mean to say is the Center of Excellences, for example, AIIMS will get a proposal saying that we have got 50 patients belonging to these particular diseases, and they would be asking for that money from the center. We will park the fund at the Center of Excellences, and then the treatment would be provided by AIIMS through the funds available to that. So we have recently, on 13th of August, issued a detailed guidelines and procedures for giving the financial assistance to patients suffering from the various rare diseases. This is the latest that we have come up in the ministry in our attempt to provide, rare disease patients whom we have been so long calling them as orphan diseases, as if there is nobody there to care for them. But we have tried our best to extend this, and we are working with the Center of Excellences to come up with the proposals, and we are also ready to disperse the fund to the Center of Excellence so that they can provide treatment to the patients who have been long waiting for treatment. We can go to next, Asna. So now this is the other voluntary crowdfunding. I understand that we all work in an ecosystem. I also understand that we all, because of the organizations that we work, we all have certain objectives. Voluntary crowdfunding is one aspect which we are having, but we also, in the continuum of care, I also personally feel that we should work in the whole of the ecosystem. Say why the rare diseases are not diagnosed on time. What is that? We need to pitch in. Why we need to increase the number of Center of Excellences. Why we need to do a little bit more research on the treatment of the rare diseases. And the other thing is, when we have come up with a particular treatment, why are we not able to bring down the cost of that treatment for that particular rare diseases? We should work in that ecosystem, and why the government should be increasing the fund from 20 to 50 lakhs, and then after 50 lakhs, what more do we need to do? What more do we need to do to increase the crowdfunding? So in a forum like this, what I feel is, we should be asking these questions to ourselves, and we should be able to assist each other in all these components. Otherwise, if we try to squeeze out only one component, it's not going to bring the result that which we which we think is optimal, if not the best, for the treatment of rare disease in this country or elsewhere. So we have tried, to strengthen the implementation of this policy on various matters. As I told you, we have tried to increase the number of centers. We have tried to come up with the new guidelines. We are trying to work with the Department of Corporate Affairs so that we get some funding through the CSRs of willing PSUs. We are trying to also facilitate some of this funding. We will also try to work with our organization who is responsible for research, for doing more research on rare diseases, and we'll also be facilitating through our Drug Control General of India, so that we have ease in obtaining individual requirements of drugs when we need to import them, so that the life of people who are struggling to import the drugs are easier. We are also at the same time trying to negotiate with them to kindly find out ways and means of doing the research here in the country itself, so that we find some drugs at an affordable cost, and we are able to provide it to patients who are suffering from rare diseases. Next, please, Artha. So I think, to cut the story short, what I would like to convey in this forum is, some of us are working in the policy, some of us are working in the health facilities, some of us are working in the center of excellence, some of us are working in advocacy groups, some of us are working in the pharma companies who are providing treatment, and some of us are patients suffering from rare diseases, or families or parents of children suffering from rare diseases. We have to be transparent. We have to be transparent to say that the treatment is available or not available, and whether efforts are being made for the research of finding the treatment or not. We should also be transparent that we do not find the results that easily for some diseases, and there are regulations in the country to permit certain drugs to be used in the country. And we should also be transparent that when it is not available, we tell that unfortunately it is not available at the moment. And we should also be transparent that even if it is not available in the treatment, we are there to support the quality of care for that patient, even when we do not have the definitive treatment for that particular patient. We should be able to have some facilities where the supportive treatment can be provided from our center of excellences or any health facility located across the country. So this kind of ecosystem, we all need to work together. And from the government, where we are working for the rare disease, my unit is working on those areas identified for us, and we would be continuing to try whatever we can to provide treatment for those people for whom the treatment is available and within the available resources of the country. And we'll also be working towards increasing the crowdfunding so that we have some ray of hope for those patients who are beyond what is known as the provisions of the guidelines policy as of now. We will also be working towards increasing the quality of life to those patients whom unfortunately we are not able to extend definitive treatment for various reasons. So with this, I wish to thank the organizers for inviting me, and I hope you continue to have valuable deliberations, and this will indeed help my team in understanding more and also encouraging more to work for rare disease in this country and beyond. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you, Dr. Sastisaran. Sir, we would be actually making a report of all the entire series of webinars, and we will submit it to you also, so that if we can make a difference in the life of these children. Really grateful that you could join, sir. Really. And now we'll proceed to the questions. So how we can do is, because we have been the category. Once, besides the presentation by Dr. Swasticharan, who is telling about how rare disease focusing on SMA and DMD is India stands today. Now we have three groups, of experts. One are the pediatric neurologists who are there. Then we have from the international NGOs, and then we have from the various pharmas. So basically, let's just go through, and let me just put the thing. First question is, what is the current scenario of neuromuscle disorders based from availability and awareness about screening, early screening and diagnosis, to holistic care, and the situation of the newer drugs in your respective countries? Should I request Dr. Purani, do you want to start about the situation in Malaysia?
Hello, good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon.
So, in Malaysia, I work with the government sector at the moment. It's the main tertiary hospital in Kuala Lumpur. And we have had no registries up as yet. So we are setting up the SMA registry at the moment, but it's also, we have some difficulties getting the government to support the online registration of these patients into a registry. We do not have a DMD registry at the moment as well. But the overall incidence of SMA in our country is about 1 in 10,000 live births. And DMD is 1 in 5,000 live male births at the moment, from the numbers that we get referred by the unit. And looking at our treatment modalities, we have none unless through the compassionate access programs for gene therapy, and for gene therapy for SMA, Zolgensma, and we've got Roche coming in for another compassionate access program for risdiplam, but nothing for DMD. So for Duchenne's, we had a trial for Ateluren a couple of years ago, which has just closed. Otherwise, we have very limited sense of budgeting and government policies to support rare disease or the numbers in this group. So the budgets, though they have been increased, not substantially, maybe about 5 million USD in the last year, but that's not enough to cover all the groups of rare diseases seen in my country.
Thank you, Dr. Purani. Dr. Jitangi, would you like to add?
Yeah, hi. I hope you can hear me clearly.
Yeah, loud and clear. Thanks for joining, Jitangi.
Okay, hi. Good morning to all of you, and thank you, Shefali, and also thank you, team, for having me on this. And let me, I think it's best if I talk not about the current situation, because currently Sri Lanka is in a major economic crisis, but let me sort of highlight what it was before. As it is, ours is an entirely government funded health system that we have, but the government expenditure on health is roughly about 4% of the GDP. So really speaking, majority of the concentration is on preventive diseases and also looking after the hospital system. So there is little emphasis on rare diseases. So if we talk about the two main diseases, the DMD and the SMA, we do not have any form of screening program. Neither do we, even the investigations just for screening is not funded. When we diagnose the patient to confirm the genetics, so even that is not funded. And none of the pharmaceutical options are available in the country for any of these patients. So I think most of the management that we offer is actually patient care and conservative management. So I don't actually foresee a situation where we would be able to offer them a form of treatment strategy in Sri Lanka for some time in the future. So that's where we are. However, with regard to patient education and supporting these patients, and also continuation of therapies that we can advocate to these patients. Not only the pediatric neurologists, the pediatricians also in the country play a major role. But with regard to treatment, we do not have those, and also will be a long time before those are available in Sri Lanka. Thank you.
Thank you, Jitangi. Anil, Dr. Anil Israni was trained with me for pediatric neurology, so he has been here all his life, but now he's gone to the more cushy and more high resource place. So now, Anil, how do you see the situation with NHS? I think you must be really very much better off than what we are, right?
Yeah, so NHS, of course, as we know, is a taxpayer-funded, comprehensive healthcare system, free at the point of care. And when it comes to chronic conditions like SMA and dystrophinopathies, it's not only about access to disease-modifying treatments, but the entire wraparound care, including good ancillary therapy services like physiotherapy, occupational therapy, speech and language therapy, dietetics, orthopedics, spinal care, hospital admissions for acute problems. That entire comprehensive package of high quality comes completely free to the child and the family. Not only that, provisions of appropriate education settings, as well as the right kind of accommodation, including adaptations to the accommodation like having a bathroom downstairs, having a chair lift to manage and negotiate chairs, comes completely free of cost to the family. Moreover, when the condition is terminal or pre-terminal, availability of palliative care to reorient and redirect care to comfort-based approach is also highly evolved within the NHS. Neuromuscular service is a highly developed subspecialty within the NHS, and consensus guidelines for SMA and DMT are followed using multidisciplinary approach. So far as access and ease of access to the disease-modifying treatments, whether it's nusinersen, which is now available in the UK for good 4 years now, as well as risdiplam and the more expensive gene therapy Zolgensma for SMA are concerned, they are all available free of cost to patients here. Likewise for DMT, standard steroid therapy as well as exon skipping treatments, etaluren, for example, are available free of cost to patients through managed access programs. But whether countries are low income, middle income, or high income countries, they do not have infinite resources. They still have got finite resources. So prioritization of patients who are most likely going to benefit from these expensive treatments is important. And with that comes identifying and recognizing these patients early. And therefore, now there is a pilot going on for including SMA in the neonatal screening itself. Likewise, for all other treatments that are under development, the recruitment for these trials is ongoing in the UK. Generally, I would say that NHS offers comprehensive support and service to children and families with chronic neuromuscular disorders.
Thank you so much, Anil. Dr. Prashant, can you just tell what is our current scenario here?
Thank you, ma'am. So in India, we are nowhere close to what NHS is offering. But still, what I can say is that now, because of the compassionate access programs, we have some sort of an access to these newer therapies that have come up, especially for SMA. We have programs which some of our patients have got Zolgensma, have got nusinersen, and now risdiplam as well. So on that front, now we are also developing some sort of an experience of our own, how these patients are faring up with that. But apart from that, more or less, the therapy for a patient who is out of this compassionate ground is far from reach because of the exorbitant cost that is there. But apart from this gene therapy, the supportive care, which would be the standard of care for majority of these patients, on those fronts, somehow the country has more or less streamlined. Now we have a lot of awareness for these disorders, and we as an institution also trying so that to advocate and create more and more awareness about these disorders, so that we have more people who join us in the corporate sector, government sector, so that we have a big manpower which can cater to the needs. But as far as financial support is there, the government has now gradually started to come in. They are trying to support us, but yes, the country is big and the demand is huge. But still, maybe slightly better off from as compared to our neighbors, but still far off from what NHS is offering.
Thank you, Dr. Prashant. Basically, screening is uh, is wishful, but it is way from starting actually and factually. And for the diagnostics also are not available from the government. They are being done. They're easily available, but there is a cost to the patient. That is one thing. And for management, we have been trying to focus on the holistic multidisciplinary management, which has to continue along with the novel therapies, which many times parents are ignoring and just chasing the novel therapies. And as of now, the experience what we have, as Dr. Prashant said, is by all compassionate use. Like for the Novartis, we're having the global access. So we've had 12 patients who were there for Zolgensma actually, and two patients of SMA1 died before the medication could be shipped. Two another are due in the next 2 weeks. But out of the one paid ones, we had only one through crowdfunding, and one we got through the Coal India Limited financed for their employee. So that was the situation there from the. And regarding the DMD, we've just had for Exondys 51, we've had patient who's getting reimbursement from the government. And for the Spinraza, we've had like in July 2019, direct relief came for the first humanitarian access program, and we had 13 patients selected that time out of the 30 from all over India. And the next lot we had in last year, March 2021. That time they selected 200 patients from India, and we had 38 of our patients. And for Risdiplam, we have 9 patients on follow-up, out of which 2 are through the crowdfunding, rest are compassionate. So basically, we still are very, we have a huge number. And the point is, besides these drugs, the supportive care of the vaccinations, having those ventilatory support thing, having the good, wheelchairs with proper support and all, they are very far from available. Now, I would request Parvati Krishnan, do just tell, how do you think, how do you think that NGOs can help? I think as a pediatric neurologist, I feel that there are 4 ways in which one is supporting the family entirely, that they are not alone, and guiding them, breaking the maze for them. Second thing is, providing, a push and impetus to the government for providing support. And number 3, getting the farmers to do the research in that area. And some of the international NGOs, like if we see, many of them have raised resources for, funding research. And lastly, but not the least, inclusion in the society as a whole. I feel these are the 4 from my side. There may be many more, Parvati, and thank you for giving us the grant and the opportunity. Yeah, thanks.
Absolutely, it's our pleasure. Thank you for inviting us. I hope you can hear me okay.
Loud and clear, and thank you so much. It's midnight for you.
Okay. Good morning to everyone on the other side. I think one of the biggest impacts that a patient advocacy organization can have is involving the various stakeholders and bringing them all together. And I think that one way that I see it being impactful is not just from the patient standpoint or the family standpoint, but impacting policy, impacting legislation, in terms of newborn screening, because that is equity and inclusion, regardless of where you're born in the country. When you have newborn screening that's standardized, it is state based, even for us in the US. So even though it's a national policy, every state then chooses to then include or exclude certain conditions. However, SMA and DMD have done a phenomenal job advocating state to state, and that was only possible because of patient advocacy organizations and families. And so, there's a national organization. but in the end, it was the grassroots patients and families working with policies and legislative representatives in their own state, pushing for laws to be passed to make sure that every child born in that state has this diagnosis. And I think one of the physicians mentioned that early intervention, early diagnosis is so important. And of course, the gap is huge, not comparing and saying that this is something that's going to be easily done. But I do think that the patient advocacy organization has a role to play in bringing the various stakeholders together, especially families who can make the case for the need to have this universal testing. In terms of support, they're just so far and so wide, and the need is so much. Like you mentioned, there's wheelchairs, there's access, there's school, there's sibling support, because when one child has SMA or DMD, the entire family, the life changes, the hospital cost, it's incremental. It's not just that one child that needs to be taken care of, it's the entire family. There's grief, there's societal pressures of trying to figure out how to live with this child. So I think that patient advocacy organizations do play a very big role in providing that support and providing that family support of understanding that you're not alone. It is not normal to live this life, but we're here and we've done this, and maybe we can help you do this. So I do think that there's a very big role that patient advocacy organizations can provide to those in the community with that condition. With research, I think it starts with Dr. Purani's point. A registry is so important, because if you're not counted, if you're not accounted for, then you cannot fight your case. And so again, whether it's a national registry or if it's a part of an international registry, I do feel very strongly part of it can be helped with the newborn screening, because if you're tagged at birth that you have this condition, then you can be counted in every step of your life when you're going through various conditions. But I think that's important, and an ICD code for me. And at least in this case, SMA and DMD do have codes that can be internationally recognized. A lot of rare diseases do not. And so I feel like that consistent use across the world can elevate that. There's so many more children that need help and so many more families that need help. So in my opinion, I feel like these are things, regardless of which country you live in, if patients, advocacy organizations, and all the stakeholders come together to prioritize these, then as a larger rare disease population will go a long way, because it's a public health issue. Rare disease is not rare anymore. It is a public health issue across the world. And if we all come together, then I definitely think we have more to gain.
Absolutely. And regarding the registry for in India also, we never had registries earlier, but now the ICMR has brought up the rare disease registry, in which for the neuromuscle part, we are having DMD, SMA, and LGMDs. We at the Center of Excellence and Advanced Research in Neurodevelopmental Disorders are collaborating with GOSH UCL and are developing a consolidated registry for all neurological and neurodevelopmental disorders, which will include neuromuscular as well. And in that, we will be also having a follow-up. Usually the registries are cross-sectional. We are making it, adding the follow-up form also in that. And that is being advocated for other LMICs as well. So maybe once, we are able to do, but, many companies do come for trials. Like we have been part of many trials also, like even we're going to start the intrathecal Zolgensma trial for Novartis, and the Sarepta trials for 45, 51, 53 are also there. The regulations and all the procedures are on. But we are really, it's really a long shot to go ahead. Thank you, Parvati. Nisha, you want to add anything on this aspect, or you want to come back later before we go to the pharma side?
No, I just want to confirm and agree with everything Parvati said. I can chime in later.
But thank you so much for having joined in our previous two sessions as well, Nisha. Now I will move on to the other big, who are providing the drugs, and probably the change in the landscape for the neuromuscle disease have come for the years of research, but I have a few queries within my mind. How does the pharma side, when you are trying to make the protocols and all, how do you zero on the new drug? What is the situation about the repurposing of drugs, and that I mean, that becomes very, very important in that situation. And how are, we, I mean, there's so many new things, especially, even for SMA, when you're thinking of many things besides a gene therapy, we are having the SMN2 modifying splicing modifiers. So there's so much work on them. There's such other mechanism of action. So lots of studies are going on. And even for DMD, if you see, so many trials are going on various aspects, not only on dystrophin part, but also on the radical free damage thing, inflammatory process. So, I mean, how is it decided which ones to go ahead? And do you think in the near future, we are going to come with we'll be having many more drugs options to be there? And lastly, but not the least, my query is, this is good for developing world and where now Anil has gone to NHS, but what about the LMICs? I mean, how it stands. So I open this up to all of you. Mr. Alessandro, do you want to start off?
Yes, hello, Professor Shifali. Thanks actually for inviting me and to be here with all of you today. I mean, a few points. I think I like to think about SMA or neuromuscular disorders is what is the today and what is the future. So today, what is the care? Today for SMA means in many countries having auxiliary care for the families, means orthopedics, means pulmonary function care, etc., etc. As actually Dr. Isnari was describing very well what the families needs or the patients needs. And that is the future, which is we see this happening in SMA in many parts of the world, which means treating pre-symptomatic patients with SMA through newborn screening. And then that means having children achieving development milestones. So I think there are kind of running into separate, streams of what does it mean treating chronic diseases and addressing a chronic disease and a specific need of patients today, which are called prevalent patients, versus the incidence of genetic diseases, and can we really then completely change the outcome having almost normal children. And I think also the third element is about, and somebody was mentioning that, was about prevention. There are indeed many rare genetic diseases that can be prevented and we can reduce the burden. So I think, of course, pharmaceutical companies are working across all these elements. I think we have the responsibility to be there also in low, middle income countries. But of course, I like also in gene therapies, I'm working for gene therapies, and I like to think that we want to have screening, we want to have prevention, and we like to have, one-time therapies where these kids could have, reach normal development milestones, because then the cost, the economic burden will go away. All the needs, all the things that has been discussed about how we can care a patient that needs continuous pulmonary care, continuous infection, this will go away. And, maybe in a few generations, we will be completely rewriting the guidelines. I think that's the aim of everyone, and I think this is what we should do with the pharmaceutical industry. And I think SMA is a really good example into the direction. We've been very privileged. I feel very privileged working on SMA because of that, and you can see that already in some parts of the world. And of course, I think also the pharmaceutical industry plays a role in trying to make these products accessible, not only in the US, in Europe, but in other parts of the world. And in fact, we are trying to do that. We're trying to find solutions, and we need to partner with the healthcare system. I think I remember the first time we met. There's also some concerns as well, right, in bringing these therapies if the healthcare system is not really ready. So having a gene therapy available where patients are not diagnosed at all or will not be making an effort to improve diagnosis, then it's not a really, well, not only gene therapy, I'll say any drug, it's not a really good investment. So the things has to go in parallel. Treatment has to go with screening, has to go with early diagnosis. That's also a more cost-effective way of using these therapies.
Thank you.
So I think
Thank you. Yeah, please complete.
Thanks. No, thank you. That's, I think,
Mr. Adrian, would you like to take on from here?
Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning the drug development is an expensive and very risky business. And that's particularly the case when it comes to rare diseases. And the reality is that many large pharma companies are just not willing to take that initial risk. If you look at PC, my company, for example, the company was founded in 1998 by a university professor who had this idea that nonsense read-through could help DMD patients. The only way he could get his drug into the clinic was to found a company. And he says himself, this was his billion-dollar education. He begged and borrowed from getting grants, from getting support from venture capitalists to eventually get Atalorin to the market. And many of you know the challenges that we had in Atalorin, in that there was no natural history when we were designing the clinical trials. So it's very, very difficult to come up with the right endpoints. And our two initial clinical trials missed the primary endpoint, but we found subgroups where we saw real benefit and we got the drug approved. But we've not yet made a profit from PTC. And that's just the reality of the situation. And, you know, the situation is not going to change, I don't think, in the near future. As companies start to develop treatments for the more rare diseases, you know, the challenge of obtaining and understanding the natural history is going to become greater. So I think it's important to understand the reality and the cost of developing drugs for rare diseases.
Thank you, Adrian. Tim, thanks for joining. Again, I think it's midnight for you as well. Really grateful that you've joined. Please.
I'm very happy to join again. Thank you so much for pulling this together. And I want to just start for a moment and just echo what Adrian said. And I think we talked about this the other night. The cost of drug development is massively expensive. As a physician caring for patients in the clinic and seeing their families, they were the greatest source of information for me about the individual diseases, and also a great driver for me. I would say they remain a great driver for me and my organization every day. We're a little different in that we are not a pharmaceutical company, but we hope to facilitate the research. And so when I think about costs of drug, costs of development, speed and time to the clinic to be able to deliver therapies, to reduce unmet medical need in patients with rare disease, I think about ways that we might be able to help with that, using better technology, using AI, using the data that Adrian spoke about. A critical part of very rare, ultra rare disease development is the lack of understanding of the natural history of disease, the lack of solid tools that researchers can make decisions quickly on drugs that might fail later on in order to not spend money or time dwelling in there. At PPD, who I work for, which is part of Thermo Fisher, we have a mission to reduce the time and the cost for development, which I think serves patients as well as the pharmaceutical industry to build the evidence that's really required. The fact that we require evidence to be able to show that treatments are safe and effective, I think, is still a critical piece of it. I know we have access programs that allow some patients to experience drugs even before they are approved, and I have seen many of those be quite successful and appropriate. But at the end of the day, we don't want to hurt patients, and so we are focused to do that. I think when it comes to a lot of the issues that I hear today, it's about access and cost. And I've been working with the Pediatric Gene Therapy and Medical Ethics group at NYU for the past 3 years now, looking at shining a light on some of those issues, trying to improve access and equity in regard to development. And I've also seen some pharmaceutical companies step up and do some really incredible work in trying to drive this. 10 years ago, I spent my time with a smaller company at the time, Genzyme, and we actually had the opportunity to work with PTC as in partnership in some of the work that they were doing. And we knew that they had the potential, but we knew that it was also going to be a long road with a lot of costs. Now, my focus is on trying to reduce those costs, to make those studies less burdensome for patients, and to actually bring studies to all parts of the world. We know that diversity in our clinical trial populations helps us understand the treatments that we're testing's effects in all of those populations, and helps us answer questions that we can't do otherwise. I applaud the Indian government attempt to try and pull as much resources as possible for individual patients. I applaud the pharmaceutical companies who have taken, all I can say is, an early risk going more and more into India. From my standpoint, as a company that does clinical trials in India to help these companies develop the evidence they need for approvals, we have had a very wonderful experience, a warm reception, a very high scientific climate, and a strong desire for patients who are interested in helping build this evidence. And so I know there are some patients here that not all can understand me, but I tip my hat back to them, as I did when I was a young physician, that they are not only part of the solution, but the reason for the solution. And I think the other folks working in the pharmaceutical industry would agree with that pretty strongly.
Thank you, Tim. Nikhil, Mr. Nikhil, would you like to add on?
Thank you, Dr. Gulati. I think Adrian summarized some key points from PTC's perspective. The only comment I'll add is, and I'll echo what Ms. Krishnan said about how important registries are, ICD codes. I think the reality of bringing access to patients in India is you need a strong screening, diagnostic, and data capturing mechanism, which gives companies the confidence to take that risk and invest in clinical trials, because they know that there is a well-characterized patient population there. Without that, and it's not just in DMD SMA, but in other rarer diseases, without that sort of infrastructure in place, it's not going to be very sensible or attractive for pharma companies to try and prioritize India for clinical trials to help generate early access. So it's almost like having to work back. What do we need in place in India first to make sure that it's a first point of call for any clinical trial?
Thank you, Mr. Nikhil. One query to the pharma side. When you're giving this managed access, humanitarian access programs, see, you've already spent so much on research and all, and then it's okay. Like when you're giving for Zolgensma, it's currently one time. But like for some other drugs, for like nusinersen as well as Evrysdi, they're going to be lifelong. And even if so really, how can the pharma give, because parents then ask for how long are they going to give, because it's not clear to the parents. And I understand with the dynamics, but the pharma has to obviously, has to get the revenue back. Otherwise, you can't go on with the research and how much effort takes. I'm just wondering on this aspect, and plus after the trials are concluded, like the Ataluren is concluded, all the follow-up, also open label extension finished, but now they're getting humanitarian access. So for how much time can a pharma give, realistically speaking? See, visually separate, we have to be in a realistic word. That's why we have all of you there on the panel, because parents ask and we have to reply, and we understand realistically, it's difficult to give lifelong. So we are really stuck what to tell them, because we don't have anything in black and white. Adrian, you want to say? Dr. Alexandro? Tim?
Well, I can start on clearly, I don't believe that we also be able to run the Global Managed Access Program forever, even if it's a one-time off. we treated actually many Indian patients, and it's also generate costs into the organization. There's also questions around the production, supply. It's like also shipping products quite complex as well, and also has a quite large cost, especially when we talk about gene therapy. So my simple answer is yes, probably we won't be able to run this GMAP program forever. That's all what I can say, to be honest, Professor Shefali.
No, no, absolutely. That's what I'm saying. One can't go on with this managed access program because they are not realistically possible to continue. Even if your Zolgensma is one time, but the cost is very, very huge. And it's not only the cost, everything shipping, getting the AV9 titers, all of them, there's so much cost to the company. So I'm being practical in asking because you can't go on with all these. Adrian and Tim want to add on this?
Speaking for PTC, we have a very limited compassionate access program. It's quite a challenge for a company that doesn't make a profit. What we are committed to doing is providing access to patients that have been involved in clinical trials until such times as the commercial negotiation is really exhausted. And for countries with a lower ability to pay, I think my personal view is that companies should be very flexible. It has to be a win-win situation for the company and for society. And personally, Nick and I make every effort to try and achieve that. But it's just supporting what my colleague said. It's a challenge to provide a free drug, and at the end of the day, the model for the pharmaceutical industry is not a philanthropic one. It's backed by capitalists that look to make money, and that the reality is that model works, and that's are developed. Ideas sometimes come from university, but it's people prepared to take a risk to develop drugs that makes the system work, and that's just the harsh reality of the world that we live in.
Can't we have in India we have corporate social responsibility, and various companies, I'm not talking about pharma companies, all companies are supposed to give something to that. Can there be a possibility, I'm just wondering, I'm just thinking aloud, that whoever are the philanthropists and all, and they pay, because it's not possible for a pharma company to do once you expend in investing on developing and then distributing, and you can't be expected. Like for example, Spinraza is coming to us not through Biogen. It's coming through as a direct relief, right? So I mean, like that, if we can have some people who can give, but that ultimately compassionate is not the answer. I personally feel in some way, if the costs can be varied for LMICs, and that you cannot have this free thing. Like even currently, with the when the Everestry was launched today, nobody from Roche could join. They had joined earlier in the previous one. So basically, what they did after it was launched, they are giving packages to the parents that you buy. That's an oral drug, so buy one bottle or two bottles, get one free, something like that. So that reduces the cost. So I'm just saying, if something like that can be developed, and obviously we cannot have NHS like thing for Malaysia, Sri Lanka and India like us. I mean, so that is not possible. So we have to get some other financial solutions. That's why we have a next webinar is crowdfunding. The government has a portal, but we are having the other agents, the other giants for the crowdfunding. And then we are talking about other aspects about financial solutions, about it, employees, how much they can give, because these costs are too much for anybody to give. It'll have to be a group effort. I mean, it was just thoughts coming. Can it not happen? Like direct relief is providing for the nursing, which they're providing only to an N number, but they're providing only in India. I told you 30 earlier and 200 now, but they have committed for life. So that's what I mean.
I just want to add one thing. I love that you're talking about the corporate social responsibility. I hope that through this, they can possibly get an idea that one way that they can support this larger initiative is by supporting the patient advocacy organizations, because there's so much power when they support an organization that's committed to providing equal access to everybody who gets it. One of the biggest concerns I've received from families in India is that my child is now 14, my child is now 16. They will not qualify for Zolgensma, so do they not matter anymore? I feel like when that crowdfunding happens, they're focused so much on that one-time medication. Not saying it's not important, not saying that it's obviously life-altering if they can get it, but if there can be more support given to the patient advocacy organizations, then everything that's being mentioned here can be made possible, whether it's a registry, whether it's newborn screening, whether it is community support, whether it is medication support. I feel like if you can come together and show that there are, I mean, you already know that there's more than 100 children who need it, but having it done in a more streamlined fashion can possibly make it more, I wouldn't say exciting, but make it more worthwhile for the pharmaceutical to then prove a point to their own company that, now we have 100 patients, we have this backup, we have this support, we have this infrastructure, we have the medical teams in place. So let us then lower the cost or let us consider a different model. I just hope that there's some amount of corporate social responsibility that can support the patient advocacy organizations as well, because I don't see that actively happening. So when people start crowdsourcing, of course, I am a rare mom, so I do understand I want to save my child. So that comes first. But for the larger community and for the larger greater good, I think it would be great if we support the advocacy organizations as well.
Thank you. Tim is saying something.
I would just comment back. I agree with that messaging. Every company that I've worked for directly has had a strong advocacy connections and also tried to support a very significant number of different things. When I think about what those things meant for access to actual patients in countries, it was always questionable. The US FDA some time ago put out some guidance for how advocacy organizations can help to build the groundwork of evidence that is needed to advance clinical trials in patients in rare disease indications. And I'll harken back to what we had said before. We've heard a little bit of talk about registries today. Again, anything that we can do to start to collapse the costs around drug development, I think, are a major ability to eventually impact the cost of drugs to consumers. In addition, when we talk about rare diseases, we're talking about economies of small numbers of patients with significant unmet needs. As we create more therapies and as we create better diagnostics, part of my company works solely on diagnostics. And when we provide access to those diagnostics, I think we will find that, as has been published a few years ago in the US, that probably 1 in 10 people in the US has a rare disease if you take all of the rare disease together. So as we mentioned, it is a societal problem. And I think society needs to make some cohesive decisions that we are going to work to reduce the burdens for patients and families with all diseases. Everyone, in my mind, has the right to health care. And I think that as we are developing new therapies, we do that with meeting unmet needs in mind. And I think we also have to, as corporations, when I was wearing that hat with a pharmaceutical company, we worked very hard and we worried every day about the costs of our drug. If you make a great drug that has a massive impact that can massively affect a patient's life, but you don't have access to it because patients can't afford it or find it, it's a very difficult situation. I guarantee you that any of the list of top 10 most expensive drugs that companies are making, that they worry every day, how do we increase access? How do we help more patients with this condition? And as we help more, hopefully that will allow companies that, along with better technologies, being able to reduce the cost of production, the cost of monitoring, and then of course the cost of evidence development in general. Because at the end of the day, it's all focused to patients. And I understand we as an industry in pharmaceutical development, we don't have a kind view of us sometimes. I understand that. There have been some bad actors within our industry, but I think there are people like those on this call and many others that are really striving every day to try and deliver better therapies to patients and hopefully also consider that whole life cycle, which includes access to all regions of the world, access to all populations, and hopefully in a more equitable fashion.
Thank you. Adrian, do you think that corporate social responsibility can help? I'll come back to you, Nisha. Can help?
Yeah, I just want to make a comment on patient advocacy. PTC would not be here today had it not been for the very close relationship, if you like, that we've had with patient advocacy. I mean, when we started with DMD, the DMD organizations were intimately involved in helping us design the clinical trials. And then if you look to SMA and Risdiplam, you might be interested to know that Risdiplam actually was funded initially by a grant from the SMA Foundation and initially developed by PTC. And it was only when in 2011-12, when the company was running out of money and needed to get money in order to survive, that we did the deal with Roche. And we sold the product to Roche. But back to the original point, PTC's very existence is due to the incredibly close relationship with the patient organizations. And sorry, you asked about corporate social responsibility. I go back to what I said before. And reinforcing what Tim said, we do worry every day about access, and we want to come up with a win-win situation, and in the interests of patients.
Yeah, thank you. Alessandro, you think corporate social responsibility can help? Before I go to Anil and Nisha, who have some.
Oh, first, yeah, actually, I want also to agree with my colleagues. I think we really thinking hard and getting how we can bring these technologies everywhere and thinking hard on access and solutions. So I think this is our main objective. On the social responsibility, I think it can work. I saw some examples in different countries. Of course, that really depends on the legal framework. If the product has a regulatory approval, yes or no. There are compliance issues. There are how financing works, how charities works, how companies or the legal framework is complex. I'm not, I'm not an expert, of course, on the Indian legal framework and how that would really work. But there are indeed some places where I saw, let's see, three-party agreements between industry, NGOs, and payers, for example, to try to increase access to treatment. So I think this is a possibility. I would say it's not plan A for us. I think plan A is actually to have broader access as much as we can and having agreements with the healthcare system, with the governments. But of course, I think would say if that's not possible, and legally there is a ways on a compliant way as well to find a solution. I think that should be also welcome.
Nikhil, you want to add something?
Did you say me? Nothing further to add. Sorry.
Yeah, Tim.
I just wanted to add one thing that I think is really exciting. And last year in, I don't know, perhaps November, I met with the Muscular Dystrophy Association near their headquarters in the U.S. We brought in a huge group of people. This was funded by a pharmaceutical company to have this meeting where we focused on issues specifically in Duchenne, but also in other neuromuscular disease research. And we have seen some exciting advances forward. We've also seen some companies dealing with some significant failures, obviously. But what was profoundly important to me was that I saw 4 companies come together and actually begin sharing information early on in their safety data, in their clinical outcome data, amongst the scientific leaders of those companies to try and prevent problems, to try and build new solutions. And I had the chance to work with a number of those companies. The people that were involved outside of those companies, I have worked with them academically in the past. That, I think, is the greatest part of what the pharmaceutical industry can bring. It's really trying to discover as quickly as possible the ways in which we can deliver treatments that will make a difference in patients' lives. And those companies are not all on here, but I applaud them, and I applaud the effort of all of us to build better collaboration. Of course, that begins with patients. Ms. Krishnan, of course it does every day. And I think that we value those interactions above all. So thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Because we're in the last 9 minutes of the session, 8 minutes left, I'll be coming to you, Nikhil, as well as Anil and Nisha, because I'm going to come to everyone for your last comments. I just wanted to add especially for Anil, Jitangi and Purnani, that we have to also focus on genetic counseling and prenatal diagnosis, because we many times, we have families with multiply effective SIBs, which is a failure of the medical fraternity, I feel, and it is still there, and it is an actual failure. And this thing, second aspect is we have to have coping strategies taught to the patient and parents from the beginning, not when they are burnt up. So I mean that we as clinicians have to also start thinking, and advocacy groups do make a difference, but as clinician we want to. So I will go through all of you one by one, and also Mr. Amrish Kapadia from PPMD India, while I'm going through all of you for your final comments. So first I'll just go to the clinicians. Dr. Purani, your final comments, and you want to add with respect to everybody will be speaking on that. Yeah, your final comments. Yeah.
Thank you, Prof. No, so I would like to add that besides the advocacy groups and going into looking at drugs, I actually wish that the pharma companies in whole, when they introduce compassionate access to drugs, especially in our country or in the developing countries, they do take back a feedback mechanism, because like what you mentioned, there is no criteria to stop medications or to withdraw once you have given it to the patient, especially like for risdiplam. There is no withdrawal plan given to the team of doctors treating this patient. So once patients fall off the SOC and they do not understand the disease or the magnanimous efforts put in by the pharma company and the treating team, and there's no standard of care being practiced, then there must be some sort of check and balance mechanism to improve why we have actually introduced the drugs in these countries and benefits of these drugs in a whole. So that's my thought on it. And for newborn screening, for me personally, as long as there's no drug or budget coming in, I think it's actually a wasteful resource, because we can't do anything about it from the beginning itself. So we are back to square one anyway. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have to continue on that. Dr. Jitangi? You're on mute.
Yeah, okay. Hi. Thanks for coming back again. I'm just was very impressed to listen to the pharma side of the story, because we always seem to feel that, how come we cannot actually have it for our patients? So, but I would like to re-emphasize the fact that, if we can give it to more patients, I think the sustainability of the medication would be, more facilitated, because as we understand, even pharma is struggling with this medication. So the larger pool of these medications are the patients are actually from the LMIC. So I think, there it seems to be something that we need to do to work out on a strategy as to how we can make it available, so that it's a win-win for both groups. So coming on to screening and also advocacy, I think I would like to talk more about the advocacy because that seems to be something that we can do. I think we don't do enough. So I would like to take from this meeting and then, really go back and see how much we can go into detail of advocacy and what more we can do as clinicians. Because most of the time, I think the counseling, the support is mostly at the beginning of the diagnosis and probably in the initial phases of the patient management, but then really the problems to the family and how they cope and the stresses and the psychological issues, it's a continuum. So I just felt that there's definitely much more we can do, and really taking on from the fact that that's the way how we can even push the governments really to get involved, at least in the form of giving them a genetic diagnosis. So we don't even support that at the moment. So that's probably something that I feel that we can take on and push for the patients. And of course, the value of establishing a register we don't have, but that seems to be something we can do because we are an island, and then so it's something that we can do, so that we can add to the numbers, so that as we discussed, there's room for pharmaceutical companies to understand the disease burden and how effective the treatments would be.
Chitangi,
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. As I mentioned, we're coming out with that registry, which we're targeting for all LMICs, not only India. So we'll share with you if you can.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Anil, would you like to say something?
Yes, thank you. So we talked about CSR as being one of the options, but the honest truth is that given the cost involved and the risks involved in developing a new drug, it's not a sustainable option. And then when we are in a capitalist economy, the equation is driven by market and competition. And that is where India has a distinct advantage with its huge population. The market is huge. The talent pool of professionals is very unique. India is gifted with huge talent. And then during COVID, we also saw that the vaccine manufacturing ability, which also means that the manufacturing ability for other molecules is also huge in India. And therefore, it makes India quite attractive in many ways for pharma companies once we have got the infrastructure for diagnostics and screening in place. Then to reduce competition, I think that's where policy making, tax rebates, ease of undertaking trials comes into play. So once all these things are in place, which is just a matter of time, India is going to be a very attractive place to undertake R&D for new molecules.
Thank you, Anil. Prashant, your inputs, and we put the poll on. The poll can be continued, and this thing is live streamed in YouTube and would be there. All the sessions are live streamed in YouTube. And Prashant?
Thank you, ma'am. In fact, I'll fully agree with what Anil has said, that these are a few things which will make India very competitive and a very fertile ground for our friends for the pharma industry. I would like to actually thank them from the patients' side and from us clinicians that they have been trying their level best to help us with. But yes, it will be actually great if we could come with a different set of a game plan for the LMICs as far as this costing and fund is there, because we all know that this is not an end based our resources, based all the funding on some sort of a access programs or crowdfunding. We have to have a more solid and a constant source of funding. Thank you.
Thank you. That's why you're working on various financial solutions, and the next session is on crowdfunding, and tomorrow is humanitarian access, and then we are trying to work about the employees insurance schemes, how they can help. Absolute amount is huge, so that is there. I will come to Parvati, you in the end, because I want you to make the closing statement. And Nisha, before you, and with that, Amrish, I want Tim to make your final remarks. Tim, your final.
Thank you very much. I just want to reiterate, I think we are in a time of massively increasing complexity in therapies, and that's not because we want to work in that world, it's because we're looking for effective therapies. At the end of the day, it costs more to do this now. The technologies we're using are new and young and are still growing. I would say that Thermo Fisher is focused to helping our partners make the world healthier, cleaner, and safer. And that very much is in our DNA when it comes down to what we do at PPD and trying to reduce the cost of trials. I'll challenge all of my industry colleagues to lead the way in developing new platforms, in using AI, in reducing barriers to access, both in clinical trials, but also in regard to getting medications into patients. I think that everyone is responding to that, but I think, as is always in rare disease, we need to do it more urgently. So I applaud the efforts of this panel, and I hope that we'll continue to see a massive improvement in care.
Thank you so much, Tim. Again, another midnight time for you, second time. Really grateful to you. We'll keep troubling you and working with you and your guidance. And Adrian, it was early morning for you too. Thank you so much for having joined.
It's my pleasure to be here. It's been a really enjoyable discussion. I just make the point that, you know, one way to significantly reduce the cost of drug development is to accelerate recruitment into clinical trials. The faster we can do the studies and the more countries we can do studies in, the faster we can bring the drugs to market. So what the countries here represented here today can do is to do everything you can to make your country more attractive for companies like mine to do clinical trials in. And that's going back to what Nick said, was making sure there's a really good registry in place where we can quickly recruit trials to do everything you can to bring the standard of care of patients to an equal level with other countries. And that's going to make your country, your center, attractive to companies like mine to do clinical trials. So that would be my closing comment.
Thank you, Adrian. Thank you so much. Alessandro?
Yes, so thank you, Professor Shefali, for inviting me.
Thanks, early morning for you too. Thank you so much.
Yes, it's early morning. Thank you. I mean, I actually, I'm an optimist. So I started neuromuscular disorders in 2015, and during this last years has been an incredible development. And today we are talking about even one-time gene therapies in India. I would never thought about that only 7-8 years ago. So I think this is an incredible moment. I also think India plays really a huge role in all this. In fact, we also have our STEER study for the gene therapy intrathecal formulation. India can play a really big role, and we believe in that. And yes, thanks again for sharing your ideas and your thoughts.
Thank you so much. Nikhil, it's evening for you, like it's afternoon for
Yeah, no, that's all right. I think just to echo other representative from industry and what Adrian said, I mean, from industry's perspective, we're patient-centric organizations that are focused on driving innovation to continue to further the boundaries of medicine. And I think it's in terms of improving patient outcomes, it's a shared commitment from clinicians, from the patient advocacy groups and industry to drive this. To Alessandro's point, I think patients in India have been more fortunate than some of the neighboring countries because of the infrastructure and access to trials. And so the issue is, yes, it's about how to make it more accessible and sustainable, but also how do we replicate that to even less fortunate parts of the world where that isn't even an option, where patients are missing out. And so we've got to continue to balance the needs as a company globally to make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nikhil, for joining. Nisha, thanks for your patience for waiting. Nisha, your comments, please. You wanted to talk something earlier also, but your final comment, please, along with that.
Yes, I just want to break this into a couple of different aspects. The main aspect that we were talking about is improving access and making it more equitable, and the reach should be most, so democratizing access to a lot of the therapies that are coming up. And the main aspect is, how do we make it affordable and accessible? Because if it's not affordable, then there's no point having a drug in place even. Using clinical trials as a care option is one of the best ways that rare disease patients can access newer therapies that are coming out. And COVID has shown that there is so much scope for global level clinical trials and improving representation from countries using technology. And India is a prime example of how technology has driven so much in short spans. We've had massive revolutions in technology. Going to decentralized trials to improve recruitment can improve immensely the representation of people from countries where it's not affordable to have a conventional trial protocol. And many companies have adopted to these newer protocols. So I believe that this is something definitely, I think, Tim, when you said, how can we make it faster? How can we make it more affordable? This is definitely something that all companies should work with to think of. And in a country like India and others with such resource constrained situations, much before you reach a point where you have to provide therapy, prevention is often the best um, prescribed protocol that is first stress on that. Dr. Shifali mentioned it. And integrating prevention strategies with social norms is one way in which the government and the nonprofits that work towards specific disorders can make this more widely prevalent. There was a recent study in Kuwait that showed that you have to show a premarital screening certificate when you go and apply for a marriage license. And that connects this necessity to a essential social norm in a country where marriage is held as an institution, and that kind of brings it to the public. And these are things that nonprofits and primary healthcare providers and government can come together to implement in the country. And of course, registries also are a point where technology can be used. I'll wind up here. Patients should be involved, ma'am. That's definitely something. It should be patient centered, even registries. Otherwise, how do you get the numbers?
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Nisha. Thank you, Nisha. I was hurrying because we have the next panelist on board and we still have two comments from here. You please stay on. And I would request Dr. Purnani from Malaysia and Dr. Vijayangi from Sri Lanka, if possible, could you stay on for the next session of crowdfunding, because I think that's a global crowdfunding. We have two big stalwarts coming from that side to say. Before that, I just have two more people to make comments. Before the final comments from Parvati Krishnan from Global Genes, I welcome Mr. Amrish Kapadia, and I request you to stay on for the next session, which will be very important. And you want to make any comments on what you heard in this session today? Dr. Amrish Kapadia is a trustee for PPMD India for muscle dystrophies. Mr. Amrish.
Thanks, ma'am. It was very enriching to listen to all the experts in their respective field. Like we as a patient advocacy groups in India learn a lot from the other patient advocacy groups around the world and try to implement in whatever best possible way we can. Like currently, we are running 3 research programs in India, which are indigenously funded and intramurally funded by our organization. One thing which I would like to comment is about global outreach for funding. I mean, we all been talking in this session about how to bring down the costs of the drugs and scale up the production. And as many of you panelists have pointed out, that it will be very difficult for the companies to give drugs on the patient access programs, and the sustainability is going to be a big question for them. And of course, we understand that a lot of money has been put by the company, so definitely the capitalists would want to recover the amount that has been put into the product. Now, looking at India, I mean, we have such a wonderful manpower and talent. I mean, can we not have a global integration, like a funding coming from the companies like US or European companies? And the research can be done in India with the help of the Indian scientists, which can bring down the research costs significantly. And then obviously the drugs will be also manufactured at a lesser cost. So this is just one thought, and the pharma companies can think about this.
Thank you, Mr.
And even,
Amrish.
of course, the repurposing drugs can be, as what Dr. Shefali was mentioning about repurposing drugs. I think more focus can be given to that parallelly with the other novel therapies, because the time from bench to bedside is obviously going to be much less.
Mr. Ambrish, this was discussed in detail in the last week's panel on research, where we had this repurposing was mentioned there. So now, Parvati, your final comment for the concluding comment of the session.
It's been such an enriching experience listening to all the different perspectives, but just want to say, out of close to now 10,000 rare diseases, there's only about 200 to 300 rare diseases that even have a treatment. So the fact that SMA and DMD are having these options, to me, I'm an eternal optimist as well. So I would hope that that can be what we leave with, that there is a possibility, there is a chance for families to get these medications, so all the stakeholders can come together to figure out a way to continue to establish a partnership, to continue to establish the need. I don't think the onus is only on industry. I don't think just reducing the cost or providing more medications is going to be the direct answer, because there are going to be more number of children, unfortunately, that are going to be continued to be diagnosed with this condition. So I hope that through this, everyone can see that the patient advocacy organization has a huge role in it. The physicians, the medical teams have a huge role in it by connecting everyone like this together. And so I feel like, in closing, I just feel like everybody needs to come together, but I think everybody has their own strong points that we can bring to the table that are important to this whole scenario to make it more equitable to everyone. It is a long process. It takes more than 10 years for a drug to even come to market, for it to be available to patients. And just like that, once it does come to market, it's not as easy for everyone to get access to that drug. But I think with time, with effort, and with consistency, it is possible. And I do have faith that sessions like this is going to make it happen. So with that, thank you all for being here, and thank you for giving Global Genes an opportunity to support the work that AIIMS is doing for this project. As a larger nonprofit organization, we are more than thrilled to support other organizations from around the world and the work that they're doing.
Thank you so much, Parvati. And we've answered some questions in the chat box because of paucity of time. All the program, all this webinars are being live streamed on YouTube, will be available, and we'll put them all in one QR code. And then we'll be probably bringing out with some documents as well. Thank you so much. And it is 1 a.m. for you, probably, Parvati, and for Tim as well. As thank you so much, everyone, for having joined. And those who can, please stay on for the next one of crowdfunding, hope versus hype, because that will help ease the thing. And we have two major, we had the introduction by Dr. Swastikaran about the Government of India portal for crowdfunding. But now we have the major people in this area who are joining up available in India. So it would be very nice if if possible for you to, not for somebody at 1 a.m., but if anybody wants to stay on, that may be more enriching, and it'll be nice to understand from their point of view. Because so that we are looking at some sustainable financial solution for these. And obviously it cannot be on humanitarian access programs, and it cannot be NHS kind thing like Anil was talking about, the whole thing given by our government because of our being a low resource country. So I now welcome the next panelist. Dr. Kakuli will be introducing them. I'll be very grateful if you can possibly stay on from the first panel, whoever is possible to. Really grateful for you to have joined from different corners of the world, different time zones. Really, really grateful to you. Thank you, Dr. Kakuli.
Thank you, Dr. Shefali, and thank you all the panelists and the participants who had been patiently looking forward for a few guidance from these webinar sessions. Today, we have two of the important crowdfunding companies who have joined with us. One is the Impact Guru, which is represented by Sandeep K. Tripathi. We also had circulated on their request the links to their other members, Avin Nair, Amrin Sheikh, Akshay Konde, Sabha S, and Ms. Gunjan. Sandeep Tripathi is a Senior Vice President at Impact Guru Mumbai. ImpactGuru.com, India's leading healthcare financing platform for patient raises money online for medical expenses via crowdfunding. It aggregates a large number of online payments to allow any individual requiring financial assistance to raise funds for medical expenses, be it cancer, transplant, accident, or any medical emergency. ImpactGuru.com has already helped mobilizing rupees 1,500 crore via crowdfunding along with its partner. And that's really a very huge amount of money. Mr. Sandeep leads the business development team with vibrant members dedicated towards facilitating quality care to numerous individuals suffering from critical ailments and toiling tirelessly making sure the crowdfunding experience is smooth. He is by profession an engineer by qualification and an alumnus of IIT Bombay. He has previously worked with Cognizant Analytics and Take Care Technologies before joining Impact Guru. We also have with us Mr. Varun Seth from Quito and Ms. Mamta also from Quito. This is a crowdfunding platform which is Southeast Asia's most visited and trusted crowdfunding platform. It is co-founded by Varun Seth, Zahir Adanwala, and actor Kunal Kapoor with the aim to bridge an affordability gap. Keto.org enables people to raise funds for health and medical emergencies, natural calamities, education, travel, short term emergency need, sports, competition, art, animal welfare, women empowerment, and many more. Keto's primary objective is to use technology to optimize efficiency, reduce redundancy, and increase impact targeting the social sector of the country. We have with us Mr. Varun Seth, who is the co-founder and CEO of Keto.org, Asia's largest online crowdfunding platform, which fuels a wide variety of sustainable causes. Right from the fundraising for startups to fundraising for medical purposes over the years, they had raised over rupees 1100 crores of funds for their causes. He was chosen in 2017 Forbes under 30 list, 2018 Fortune magazine 40 under 40 list, 2019 Economic Times 40 under 40 list. He has also been invited as a speaker at several coveted speaking events by Harvard Business School, TEDx, IS University, IIT, and TISS. Now we welcome both the major players in the crowdfunding, the Impact Guru and the Keto. I give the mic to Dr. Shifali to start and facilitate the session.
Yeah, thank you so much. Basically, we are on this currently, we are on the 16th webinar in the series of 20 webinars, which have been there on the financial advocacy for rare disease with the focus on SMA and DMD, which are the commonest of the rare diseases, with everything being so exorbitantly and prohibitively expensive. So we have had various webinars. We're talking about Government of India. Slides, slides, please.
Slides.
We are talking, from the various, from the Government of India, we've had what is the rare disease policy, what are the funds available as per person fund maximum, which is now been, the first slide, please, now been there to about 50 lakhs at one time thing. And we know the cost is so prohibitively expensive. For example, for SMA, Zolgensma, it's 16 crores. For giving Spinraza, nusinersen is 4.2 crores for first year because you have loading doses, and then 2.1 crores annually. For Risdiplam, it comes around 2.4 crore, but with the current Roche is giving some discount to patients around 1.2 crore per annum. Coming to DMD, the range of the cost is 6 to 8 crores per annum. So these are very, very huge costs which are involved. So just wanted, so that's why we requested, and we are very grateful that you could spare your time, because, this is a important thing, because we as doctors don't understand many aspects about it, and it should be reached out to maximum people. And many of our patients have got some funded. One of my patients got funding for Zolgensma from Impact Guru, and like some of them have got for Risdiplam for some amount of money, but it should be available to everyone. And the idea of the webinars is for empowering the parents as well as the professionals in this area. So I will just be flagging those questions, which will I'll request both of you to answer. Mr. Sandeep Tripathi, and will be requesting you as well as Varun Seth to answer the questions. First is, what is crowdfunding? What is the necessity of crowdfunding in the rare disease and neuromuscular diseases like SMA and DMD, and who all can avail? The cost involved I have shared, but I would request you, I want to start, uh, Mr. Sandeep, you would like to start off?
Sure. Thank you, firstly, for having us here. Now, to answer your question, so crowdfunding is essentially the method to raise funds through financing platforms to support a project or an expense with contribution of small amounts from a large number of people. When we are talking about rare diseases, or for that matter, any critical illness, when the cost is significantly high, it is very difficult to get funding from a single source. And it is the middle class families who actually suffer the most. Uh, Via crowdfunding, world's most expensive drug, Zolgensma, which roughly costs, as you mentioned, 16 crores INR or 2 million US dollars, needed to treat SMA, was also made accessible to patients. Now, the cost of treatment for these rare diseases is significantly high, which makes it unaffordable for a large number of people. However, via crowdfunding platforms like Impagro, the treatment has become affordable to people who would not have been able to afford it otherwise. So we raise funds for such patients to help them with their medical expenses. And it is not just restricted to covering medical costs, it is also to cover the post hospitalization costs, the rehabilitation costs, or any kind of emergency medical requirements which might arise as a part of their treatment.
Mr. Varun, you want to
Yeah,
add?
hi. Hi, good afternoon to everybody and happy Ganesh Chaturthi. Firstly, thank you so much for having me over here and really appreciate it to be a part of this audience and share, you know, whatever little insight and experience that we can share. As Sandeep mentioned, the idea of crowdfunding is bringing people together from different parts of the world and getting people to participate with as less as 1 rupee that they can donate and create an impact and change a life and help a patient that is in need. We believe that crowdfunding uh, is a fantastic way for patients who are unable to get support from their uh, from 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 their insurance companies, or if they don't have insurance, or from some government scheme. We believe that crowdfunding is a great way to get access to that financing and funding that's required compared to really going bankrupt in a country like India, where so many people go bankrupt because of high medical expenses and costly treatments, and of course the cost of treatment going increasing year on year because of the high inflation. It is a sustainable, manageable way for people to access funding and financing, and not really sell their assets, their houses, etc., to raise the funding that is required to pay for the medical treatment. And over the years, we just completed 10 years, we've seen that people are more than happy to come forward and help on a regular basis because they know that by supporting somebody's medical treatment, they are impacting a life immediately and are able to connect on an individual basis as well with the person that they're helping and the person's life that they are saving.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you have the next slide, please? In disorders involving such exorbitant treatment costs like DMD, SMA, does crowdfunding, it's able to provide all the support they need? Because see, the government is giving around 50 lakhs as of now, and you understand the costs are prohibitive. It's not so whether they are able to, get so much amount actually. Because see, I have only one patient who's got that Zolgensma from crowdfunding, but I do know that somebody else who got in the lottery from from the Novartis was trying for crowdfunding and had some amount, but it was very minuscule amount. So I really wonder whether it is. I mean, we just know the success story. So behind, there's a one success story which we know, but how many I have been trying and how much it is, what is the ratio and actually does it work? So it is up between Mr. Sandeep and Mr. Varun. You can take on.
Yeah, I can take that one. I think obviously because the amount required is extremely large, right? And thereby which to raise that kind of money is not easy at all. It's very 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 difficult, I would say. Uh, uh, the way that at least we look at it internally is that from a patient perspective, crowdfunding is one avenue of financing. Today the patient is trying to raise funding or get support from multiple places, be it a discount from the pharma company, be it some subsidy from the government in terms of tax waiver, be it putting money out of their savings account, or borrowing from friends or family. We believe crowdfunding is one of the ways of them to access financing and funding for that treatment. It should not be looked at as the only way of getting money for treatment, especially when the treatment is so expensive. So we encourage whichever patients come to us for SMA or any other rare disease or any other disease, that look at this as one source of financing and not the be all and tell all of all solutions when it comes to raising funds and paying for costly medical treatment. And thereby which some have succeeded, some have failed, some have got some amount of funding as well. But our view is that in general, when it comes to paying for medical treatment, one is better than zero. So that's how we basically look at it, and that's how we basically engage with patients using our platform as well.
Mr. Sandeep?
Yeah, so I agree with what Varun said and completely echo with it. So last year, the government of India released the national policy for rare diseases, which is a remarkable step that will open new possibilities for support of rare disease patients. Now, the government's efforts to solve the issue for funding rare diseases also believe crowdfunding is one of the platforms or avenues to receive funds while encouraging communities to donate for the larger good under the national policy. Now, online crowdfunding has fundamentally changed people's belief that no matter how high the treatment cost is, there is enough generosity of people to be able to receive financing and access to quality healthcare. So even the first SMA kid, which we were able to help, the government at the end they also stepped in and waived off the import duty amounting to a whopping 6.5 crores. So it is, as Varun very rightly mentioned, it is not just one or the single avenue which will solve the financing problem for all patients. It is one of the avenues that will help patients have access to all these therapies that we have in place.
Thank you. Tarun, next slide, please. One thing before we go to the next slide, I was just wondering, there's a question also. What percentage, Mr. Murali is asking, he's from an NGO. He's asking what percentage will reach the beneficiary after crowdfunding is collected for a patient. I mean, he's again reframed it. How much percentage of the raised fund goes to the beneficiary? So basically, he's asking that what are the charges of the platform or something. Another thing, what I want to ask you is, like that instant of that individual I was talking to you about who was trying to raise money through crowdfunding. I do not know which platform it was, but he had raised a couple of lakhs, means about 25-30 lakhs. So it was way below the 16 crore. But the child got the global access program gene therapy. So then what happens to the 25-30 lakhs? I mean, there should be some regulations to it, whether how it goes. So, I mean, what are the guidelines? Are there some kind of guidelines and any regulations for crowdfunding? Because that's always that was coming to my mind. I didn't question the family because I just did because they were not doing the crowdfunding with involving me. So, but that just come to my mind because what for they were doing the crowdfunding, they've already got it from a from a lottery from the Global Access Program. So what happens to that and what percentage comes? So I mean, both Sandeep, आप बोल के फिर वरुण बोलेंगे. हाँ जी.
All right. So transparency and trust, they are, it is literally the foundation of online giving. When it comes to Impact Guru, the standard protocol we follow is we let the donors decide if there is any unutilized money that is there on any campaign. We let the donors take a call on what happens to the funds that are available on the campaign. They may either choose to take a refund. They may also choose to give it to some other patient who needs financial assistance for a similar kind of therapy, ideally. But eventually, it is with the donors who decide what happens to the money.
And what percentage goes, like, mainly suppose 16 crores has to go to for the treatment. So how much will actually have to be raised for 16 to go to the patient?
So we operate under different pricing plans, wherein the price of the fee deducted for any campaign depends on the level of servicing which the patient's family opts for. And our charges start from as low as 0% if the patient requires minimal guidance or just want to utilize our platform to be able to raise funds. And the more the more assistance they need, the charges can go up. So our typical charges include 0% fee, 5% charges, 5% fee, and a 8% model to be able to 8% charges to be able to raise money. And the payment gateway charges, the foreign transfer charges, they are on top of these charges.
So the person who's donating, he or she has a tax exemption.
On certain campaigns, if the money is being utilized for an Indian patient opting treatment in India, of course, via our partner NGOs, we can make tax benefits available for some campaigns, if not all.
And what you mentioned about the custom duty exemption, that we always ensure, the government always gives, we send a request, and they, because the custom duty is also humongous, so that they have always been kind and about it. That, and the donations come from global donations. The donations are global.
Yes.
And you were looking after only Indian patients or global patients?
So for Impact Guru, it is as in most of the patients we help as of now are Indian patients, because we have a lots of checks and balances in place. In fact, some of them involve our team visiting the hospital to validate if it is a genuine patient or not. So as of now, we are operational only in India.
Okay. And can we have the similar questions queried from Varun for Keto?
Yeah. At Keto, I firstly agree with what Sandeep just said, that trust and transparency are the pillars of crowdfunding and online fundraising. Our view on the first question is that it's up to the donors. So we encourage the campaigner to constantly using the tools on the platform to keep donors updated on the treatment stage where they are, if they don't need the funds because of some lottery, and thereby which donors get an option, either A, to take a refund, B, to support the family, or C, to help another patient, a similar patient in need. So these are the general three options that are given to donors in circumstances that you mentioned. In terms of fees, our pricing works similar to what Sandeep mentioned. It starts at 0%, where if you do it yourself, the platform fees are 0%. And then there's a 5% fee where there's a certain amount of content effort that is put in, and so on and so forth, based on more effort that is put in by the platform. Our average is about 5% across the board when you look at it from a macro lens, and that is when it comes to our plans and pricing. We work very closely with hospitals to maintain transparency and making sure that the utilizations of funds are done as per mentioned in the campaign. So we work right now. We are at about 160 odd hospitals where we have a kiosk and we have a team which allows us to engage with the patient, the hospital, the admin, and make sure that the funds reach in the hospital's account as well. So yeah, we really focus on that, and of course we want to be in as many hospitals as possible, and we're talking to more hospitals where we can, have a kiosk and have our team over there. We also want to try and work with hospitals if we can, integrate ourselves into their CRM systems because, if a patient comes and puts a listing on the, on the platform, one of the things that we ask them is to share a hospital document, like a cost estimate or hospital bill. But in cases where we don't have a team member, it takes close to at times 10 days to get a reply from hospital to for them to confirm if this document is genuine or not genuine. So we're trying to even tell hospitals that hey, let us get integrated into your billing system where at least if somebody comes and says that I'm in this hospital, that information can quickly go to you and you can verify and confirm.
You become mute by mistake.
Sorry. Yeah. So yeah, basically that's something that we're trying to do as well to make sure that uh, uh, the pillars of trust and transparency stand strong, throughout crowdfunding.
But the most important thing is authenticity of the patient and the prescription. Like what are your SOPs for that? Because I think that becomes a very important
Yeah.
thing.
So in places where we have a kiosk, where we have a team member, which is close to about 180 hospitals across India, any prescription or any estimate that has been uploaded by the patient, our team member goes and verifies it with the hospital team. So in most hospitals, we have a POC that has been assigned to us, where we can go and check that if this is genuine or no. We do not get involved in terms of is the treatment referred by the doctor right or wrong. We're not medical experts in any way. That we can basically say that is this treatment right or wrong, or is this line of treatment right or wrong. So we don't get into line of treatment. Our view is that to make sure that the patient that the treatment has been referred by the hospital itself, and the hospital is saying that this document is genuine, and this patient has to go as per our clinical analysis, has to go through this treatment.
Thank you.
And we basically have also taken a step in that direction where we add a verified tag on our campaigns where we've gone through this process. So hopefully our goal is that we are available across 600-700 hospitals in the next 1-2 years, where we're able to put that verified tag in as many fundraisers as possible.
Because this thing sometimes you have collaborating with some parent support groups, and that provides some support, coordination. As I was told by QRSMA that QRSMA has some collaboration with Impact Guru. Is that Mr. Sandeep? So basically if there is a collaboration that helps the patients in some way.
So QRSMA, yes, we do have a collaboration with QRSMA, and they help validate the requirements. They help validate the genuineness of the patient because since QRSMA is a group which has been working in the SMS segment for quite some time, and some of them, or rather most of them, are parents or family members of SMA patients themselves. They know that ordeal which they themselves went through while arranging funds for SMA, for treatment of SMA. So they have been doing a phenomenal job when it comes to also taking various strides forward in solving the entire treatment space of SMA in the country with the help of hospitals, with the help of non-profits, with the help of crowdfunding platforms like us. And yes, so they basically help us validate the patients. They also help us in understanding the treatment regimen that has been recommended to the patient, because right now there are three options which are available to a lot of patients. Of course, as a patient crosses 3 years of age, it is restricted to just one or two options.
Thank you. Can we have the next question, please? What are the ethical issues, that need to be taken care of while disseminating the information? I'm not that much of a Facebook person, but whenever I open the Facebook, it's always Impact Guru something there, right? So I mean, how that's good that it is there. I mean, I feel good about it that it's there. The point is that, I mean, what are the ethical issues which have to be taken care about by disseminating information? Because there are videos of the probably they must have given consent. You understand the videos which are talking about the disease, and also the ethical issues. There must be something must be in place, na protocols for that. Right?
I think first most important one is that making sure that all the documentation is genuine, and another documentation is uh, photoshopped or anything like that. So that's extremely important. Number one, in terms of being ethical about uh, the need. Uh, Second is constantly making sure that the patient or patient family is constantly keeping the donor community updated about treatment, how's it going, progress, information. Third is that making sure that hospitals are not, overcharging these patients, because of course these patients are underprivileged, and typically crowdfunding is last resort, right? My learning in this space in 10 years is that crowdfunding is used as a last resort by the patient after they've tried everything under the sun. All doors are shut. This is the only way possible, only way forward. Typically, I would say 80% of people who desperately need money and have no other option decline to do crowdfunding because they're not comfortable about putting their information online. So it's only the 20% who are actually doing it, from all the people who are desperately in need of funds. So the other point I was trying to make is that making sure that hospitals are giving them the right diagnosis and the right treatment cost as well, when it comes to knowing their uh, financial financial capability as well. And fourth is, if post treatment, if any surplus funds are remaining with the hospital, making sure that is communicated correctly with donors, and donors get an option to take a refund or potentially support another patient in need as well.
Yeah.
Yes, so we also frequently receive campaigns with social stigma connotations. I think Varun would also agree with me on this fact that social stigma continues to be the largest blocker in terms of getting people to crowdfund. When asking patients about media, we need to be extremely cautious, since anything could trigger the campaigner and the family members. So we exercise utmost caution while deciding which information should be shared and what should not be. We only share the information in the media after the patient's family's consent. When while talking about all the criterias on the basis of which a fundraiser is qualified, the documents, etc., they are validated. In fact, people can create campaigns themselves online on a platform. However, no content goes live. The photographs, the medical documents, etc., they do not go live until and unless our trust and safety team validates it themselves, which takes up to 48 hours. And there is a disclaimer put for donors to also take informed decisions that the fundraiser is being checked, and you can donate only if you are yourself aware of this fundraiser, this campaigner, or this disease.
Thank you. Next question, please. Is it a long-term solution to existing problems? Are there any other alternative solutions to this? You understand that in LMICs with such huge amount expected.
I think my view about it's definitely not the only solution. I think it is one of the solutions when it comes to healthcare financing, and that's the way at least we look at it. That healthcare financing is done through insurance, through loans. Crowdfunding is one of the solution, healthcare financing. But the long-term solution has to be in terms of today people are using crowdfunding because healthcare is so expensive, right? And if healthcare is expensive, it's primarily because of hospital doctors and pharma companies. So if everyone, all of those guys start reducing their cost, then automatically, a 20 lakh treatment will cost a 10 lakh rupees. So that coupled with government reducing taxes on pharma, on medicine, on hospital stay, and of course new hospitals getting built. Those are the only ways to bring down the cost of treatment. The long-term solution is bringing down cost of treatment. That's the only solution.
Yeah, Mr.
So,
Sandeep.
yes, so undeniably, crowdfunding has emerged as a viable alternative to finance healthcare expenses in India, but it is not the only solution. A very large myth which people have also is if I've started a campaign on Impact Guru or Keto or any other platform, money will come automatically, and I need not worry about the finances of the treatment. That is a very common myth which a lot of people have while starting a campaign on Impact Group. But I think COVID was also an eye opener when it comes to how, as a country, we are not, our masses are not maybe well prepared. I think it opened the eyes of the entire world. In India, the healthcare insurance is also severely under penetrated. The insurance coverage ratio stood at 30% or just 42 crore of the 130 crore odd population. And with more than half the population devoid of health insurance, crowdfunding continues to be a viable solution, but not the only solution. So, to sum it up, even as we expect last mile penetration of the healthcare system, the crowdfunding sector will continue to bridge the gap towards healthcare, affordable healthcare in the country. So it is just an option to bridge the gap between all the other sustainable solutions, other solutions that the government as a whole, primarily being a huge player, can bring into the system.
Thank you. Next slide, please. I have been asking earlier also whether there are regulations or guidelines, because are they regulatory in nature? That is what is the issue I wanted to clarify. Are there any laws or I don't know.
There are no specific laws around crowdfunding, but there are laws around. I'm guessing around what hospitals can charge, what doctors can charge, what pharma companies can charge, and of course there are enough laws around misusing or misusing funds or cheating people under IPC 420 from what I understand. So I think there are enough laws that apply to crowdfunding, both in terms of uh, 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 somebody raising funds, not using it for the purpose mentioned, and there are enough regulations around that today. And of course, there are regulations around what hospital pharma companies can charge as well. So I think there are enough regulations which apply to today to crowdfunding. Uh, and my view here is that rather than increasing regulation, I think if there are more associations where crowdfunding platforms get to work closely with hospitals and doctors to create stronger SOPs, that will be even more beneficial to the whole ecosystem.
Thank you. Sandeep, want to add?
So, yeah, just want to add the purview of rare diseases. Even with regards to rare diseases, there is no such specific laws that governs the crowdfunding campaigns for rare diseases like DMD or SMA. However, the government of India did approve the National Policy for Rare Diseases 2021 to increase focus on indigenous research and local production of medicines. Uh, with regards to the utilization, as Varun mentioned, if the money is being utilized properly, so what we also do as a platform is ensure the transfer happens either directly to the hospital to avoid any kind of misuse of funds, or to the let's say pharmacy if the patient is opting for a medicine or a therapy. We prefer directly to transfer it to the distributor or the pharma company directly so that the money is utilized correctly. And of course, when it comes to these high cost treatments, a lot of them require lifelong treatment, lifelong therapies. In some of these diseases, DMD, for instance, there is no definitive treatment that is available in the country as of now. So we validate whether the cause which is mentioned by the patient is genuine via the hospital, because we are no healthcare experts when it comes to giving medical advice on what treatment to follow, what treatment not to follow. So we leave that to the hospital to decide. And as long as the hospital is validating that the money is being utilized properly for the said cause for which the patient claimed to raise money, we make sure it is, say, utilized correctly here.
Thank you. So I think we can just go on to the next question. One thing was coming to my mind, one thing is a one amount is a one-time thing. Other is a recurring cost, right? So for the Zolgensma kind 16 crore, you have to raise one time and you give once to the patient, right? When it's being administered, when it's being transferred. But if something is recurring, like we are talking about recurring treatments for DMD as well as for SMA for that risdiplam or Spinraza. So when they go out, so they are asked to for the crowdfunding. The money is asked for some duration of time, and
Yes.
how is it decided, and is that entire amount given to them? Because I mean, how is it done? Like,
So for
recurring ones, yeah.
lifelong therapies, recurring therapies, and for even for cancer, where a patient might need multiple cycles of chemotherapy or radiation therapy,
Yeah.
we raise money as per the goal amount, as per the prescribed amount by the hospital. And as and when the patient requires fund, we transfer in tranches. So the money remains with Impact Guru till the time the patient needs the funds. So that if the patient at some point does not need funds anymore, we go back to the donors, tell them that this amount is unutilized and what needs to be done with the remaining part of your money. But we do not transfer. So let's say for Risdiplam, we do not do this, that we collect, say, 5 crores for the therapy for, let's say, 8 years, 9 years, and disburse the 5 crores to the personal account of the campaigner. So as and when the patient requires therapy, we transfer in tranches depending on the medical estimate, the bill which the patients might require for that therapy.
I think then we can. And then
I would like to plus one on Sandeep.
Yeah,
On what Sandeep said, I would like to agree to.
Okay. So I think next question, please. What about the patients coming from low socioeconomic strata of the society with poor educational status and poor access to media and social media? In what way can these patients have access to crowdfunding campaigns? I wanted to share with you what dilemma we face sometimes because of ethical issues and all. A patient came to me from Odisha, and I was told later by the parent support group that the parents were sitting outside the Puri temple trying to arrange money. So I mean the desperation and I'm just saying the what is the situation happens. So now what happens now? This situation. Yeah, please.
Sure. So for us, at least, obviously, we would love to help each and every person possible in this country or in the world also, right? But we also have certain limitations, and where the young industry in general, and it's growing and it's creating more awareness. More people are coming to know about it. So we get a lot of patients from low status society, from rural India, and our idea is that to first is to really counsel them, make them understand we see a lot of pushback, and that's why we can get help from doctors, where even though they're from a lower strata society or from rural India, they're not just not comfortable the whole world knowing about their problem, and their need. The thought really is that, what will people from my village think? Or if it's a girl, if it's a girl child, will there somebody marry her, in the future? So there are a lot of these inhibitions that even people from the lower strata society have in terms of using crowdfunding platform, and that can be overcome through, right counseling, and of course counseling from doctors as well. That this is the approach they should take. So that is one aspect of it. Second aspect of it is that, of course, because if they're not on social media, that's something that there is somewhere that's where we have to help them, right? That's where we come in terms of helping create content or writing a story or marketing it on social media platforms, because they don't have reach and they don't have any access to anybody who will come forward and contribute them. So that, yeah, these are the two things that come.
As the number of crowdfunding programs increased post increasing awareness recently?
Yes, a few years ago, as Varun also mentioned, crowdfunding as an industry is a pretty young industry. So a few years ago, crowdfunding was an alien topic for majority of the people in the country, including a lot of hospitals with which we were speaking to. They were not aware of crowdfunding as a concept. And people, when we also told them that such a concept exists, they were not very confident on whether it will be successful or not, whether people will be able to raise money in a country like ours. But when a lot of people, including a lot of our campaigners, when they themselves see the outcomes of crowdfunding, when they see that generosity in India, there is no dearth of it. People are willing to help. It only takes, the only thing that people need to do is to come forward, share their appeal that we need funds, or this is the cause for which we are raising funds. So as long as the cause is genuine, people can raise money no matter from what background they are from. But again, one thing I would like to add here, similar to how a lot of similar to how loans depend on the CIBIL score of an individual. People have different CIBIL scores. People have, and the loan eligibility depends on how high or how low the CIBIL score of an individual is. Even in crowdfunding, it depends on how much of a social media presence and how much of efforts the patient's family, the campaigners, are willing to take to share their appeal. As long as crowdfunding platforms are concerned, we ensure the authenticity and credibility of the campaigner is proper, is checked, is verified, so that the donor's money is utilized for the right cause.
Thank you. We can go on to the next one. What are the main reasons for failure of some crowdfunding ventures? Actually, I just wanted to understand that how many are successful with this kind of humongous cost thing, and what are the measures that can be taken to improve the success rate? Till we have other options available. See, I remember that patient of mine who had got the funding from Impact Guru. I came to know that somehow it was taken to KBC, and I don't know whether that actually expedited the thing. So whether that partnership with social media and all, and anyway, you are doing all that in Facebook, because I was telling you, when I open it, I don't know why it is coming in my account or it's coming in everybody's account, because I'm not that much frequenting Facebook. But there's so many comes in, and the only thing which is coming to my mind is you have those ghastly pictures of something. So the ethics car that was coming to my mind, but it was good that people are forced to sort of see. The only thing is, there is any way you can partnership, or it's in those tiers you were saying they have their levels, the packages are from 0% to some whatever are there, but that, do you mean that somebody who's gone through KBC actually went through you? I mean, with your you through you means support with you, support from you at a particular level of support. Like you said, you have different levels of support to the parents with the different levels of charges with that, right? So like that person, like if he went on a national media and this, that was also a point, that is also another kind of a tier for you? I mean, like that. I just wanted to be clarification. Yeah.
KBC, I think Sandeep can answer. I just want to, share on the ethics of, because you mentioned on the ghastly images and content.
They're not ghastly for us, they're not ghastly for us because we're doctors. But I was just saying, if a lay person is seeing, आप समझ गए? And we also, I'll tell you what, we actually cover the eyes of the patient when we are using their videos. But if you see on those Facebook things, they are not covered. They are, but they must have given consent.
Correct. So firstly, as Sandeep mentioned, the idea is firstly you counsel the family and that what kind of content. So in the most ideal sense, we would not want to put anything, and people should give money, right? That's the best case scenario where we just say that hey, some Varun exists, and he.
Varun, do you expect that?
No, my point of.
That's a visual thinking.
Yeah, exactly. That's visual thinking, right? So the idea is that, and I would probably I would want to answer this for the whole industry, not only Keto but even all other platforms. We are constantly trying to do that, to be honest. But it's extremely difficult to convince somebody to come forward and give money if the content is not right, and thereby which we would want to, taper down the content and the emotion, you can call it, as much as possible. But on social media, all you have is 3 seconds. All you have is 3 seconds to capture somebody's attention to actually click and see the whole content or read the content. So if in the first 3 seconds your content is not good, they're going to miss it and skip out and not come forward and contribute. So that's basically learning and 2 cents on that in terms of what we're doing. On KBC, I think Sandeep can mention, because I think that was the Impact Guru campaign, what they did.
So, totally agree with Varun here on the ethics part. Unfortunately, people do not donate till the point they actually see what the patient is going through. So again, none of the content is shared without the consent of the patient's family. And when it comes to platforms like KBC or any other social media or otherwise PR activity, we help the patients understand where the avenues where they'll be able to share these campaigns. Now, a lot of them, a lot of celebrities, they come forward and help patients on their own. In fact, for one SMA patient in the past, as many as 50 celebrities came forward and either retweeted the campaign, they shared the campaign on their personal social media handles, and a lot of them also donated on the campaign. So it is just about reaching out to the right people, uh, reaching out to the right audience and telling your appeal, sharing your appeal. As I mentioned earlier, also, there is no dearth of generosity in India, be it celebrities, be it non-profits, and be it even a lot of doctors have themselves shared and donated on our campaigns in the past. So I believe there is no dearth of generosity. It just takes the patient's family to come forward and share their appeal. If I were to answer your question of the reasons for failure, I do not know the exact reasons for failure, but how it can avoid failures is by putting utmost transparency on how the money is being raised, why it is being raised, and how it will be utilized. I believe every platform should have a very clear brief on all the campaigns that are ongoing to develop trust amongst its donors. The credibility is what attracts donors to donate on the campaign and then to come again and donate on a different campaign on the same platform or on any crowdfunding platform.
Okay, thank you. So basically, now just tell me, what will you be thinking about the messages to patients and all, how it is? I mean, how should they go about?
No, I would share.
One second, sorry, Geetanjali, you've joined from Milap? Geetanjali?
Hey, Dr. Shefali, this is Gitanjali from FSMA.
Okay, sorry. Okay, fine.
Yeah. I just wanted to hear the session. Yeah.
Once again. Yeah, sure. You are most welcome. Please continue. Sorry. Yeah.
No, so I think the message out there is one is that uh, messages. I would say one message is on the hospital side that to be as engaged with crowdfunding platforms as possible, to try and look at more integrated ways to share patient, at least if not information, at least share that if a patient is genuine and the need is genuine. I think greater partnerships and closer relationships with the hospitals and doctors will be definitely something that will be very helpful and would be a good way to go to the next level. Second is of course on the on the patient side, right? How to make sure that you put the right information out, be as genuine as possible when it comes to creating content, and not look at crowdfunding platforms like a bank, right? Where you come and just put an application and then you hope that your application will get approved. It's a collaborative process and a collaborative approach where you, the patient, family, your friends, your colleagues, your network, and of course the platforms need to come together and work together to make that campaign successful. It's not somewhere where you just come and put an application and then you'll hope that you'll get the money. And if you don't get it, it's the platform's fault.
Thank you. Sandeep?
Yeah, totally agree to what Varun said. Uh, to add to that, I think the problem we are trying to solve, all of us in this session, is to make quality healthcare accessible to the masses. Now it is not just one person, which would be it a crowdfunding platform or the hospital. None of the individual elements will be able to solve the massive problem that we have across the country just by themselves. So a very deep collaboration between all the stakeholders, the hospitals, the doctors, the patients' families included, the crowdfunding platforms, the non-profits, patient advocacy groups, all of them need to come together, the government as well, to be able to solve the problem for the society as a whole. The only, say, key takeaway for patient families is perhaps to start the success of a campaign depends on how much of efforts they themselves and their family members are going to put in to ensure that the campaign is a success. And early identification of, or rather, early onset of a campaign is very important, similar to the medical fraternity also. The earlier we diagnose a problem and try to solve that medical illness for a patient is also applicable for the crowdfunding sector. So a lot of patients, particularly for critical illnesses, they opt for a crowdfunding platform at the fag end of their say treatment cycle, when they have exhausted all their savings, when they have literally mortgaged everything they had amassed over their lifetime of hard work. They would have taken loans at God knows what rates of interest. And as Varun mentioned earlier in the session, crowdfunding, a lot of people consider crowdfunding as the last resort. So that also needs to change fundamentally to be able to solve this problem, because again, it comes with a timeline. People would be able to raise more money, or rather to the maximum of their potential, if they start the treatment as well as the crowdfunding option at an early stage.
Do you think that there should be some collaborations with the doctors and the parent support groups will help, like you have one with your SMS, Sandeep?
Yes, of course. As in, because a lot of people, doctors are the first people who come across as in, they understand the patient better than anyone else out there. And I think next in line would be the patient advocacy groups, because they understand the journey which the patient will go through. And a lot of times the patient themselves are not aware, because for them it is the first time they're coming across such a situation, be it with regards to the treatment, the consequences of the side effects which the treatment might have, the kind of finances that they would probably come across. And doctors and the patient advocacy groups are placed at a much better situation to be able to guide the patient throughout the journey than anyone else out there.
Thank you so much. Want to add anything, Varun?
Nothing more than what Sanjeev has said. I think I concur with what he has said, and I think that's the right way forward now.
Yeah, actually, besides you, main platforms of Impact Guru and Keto, there are also Milap and Give India. But obviously, you are the two main ones, which is for others to just be knowing from the net. We don't know them personally. And I'll ask Mr. Amrish from PPMD to ask any questions or queries because he is leading the muscle dystrophy, the trustee for the muscle dystrophy NGO. And if Geetanjali from FSMA wants to ask anything. So, Mr. Amrish, first to you before we end the question, end the session, I mean. And the Q&A
So
have answered and have been answered. Yeah, please, Mr. Amrish.
yeah, most of the discussion in the part of the discussion, my queries were answered. So I don't have any further queries in this.
Thank you so much. Geetanjali, you want to ask anything?
No, doctor. I
And
think they've answered most of the queries that we had.
And yeah, I'm really personally grateful to you, Mr. Sandeep and Mr. Varun, for having joined. And I think it's very important that, everybody is trying to do everything in their areas and they are doing it. Everybody's doing silos. I think we have to get together and that's only we'll be working for the cause of these children with the various neurological, neurodevelopmental rare diseases and where we are focusing currently on DMD and SMA and the total all this anxiety and stress and all this human cries come up because of the science is advanced and science is advanced. We've got new therapeutic options, but because of the patenting, because obviously we've had the previous discussions with pharma companies, the amount of R&D they put in. So obviously the cost is humongous, right? So that's why I think you are. It's been really very nice discussing with you. Anything you want to add on in the last, Mr. Sandeep and Mr. Varun? You can just take final.
No, I just want to add that firstly, thanks so much for having me over here. Really appreciate it. Especially on a day off. I just want to share that I think as a unit we all need to work closely and work together. As doctors, hospitals, and crowdfunding platform. I think if we work together and in more deeply engaged way, we'll be able to help a lot of more patients. I think the demand in a country like India for need of financing is extremely large. Millions of people are going bankrupt every year because of high medical expenses. So I think if we work together more closely and of course build more, I would say build a sector and build more credibility to a sector, you know, through our own mechanisms of reach out. I think we'll be able to help a lot more people in need. I think if we think about it from a negative standpoint, then definitely lesser people are going to get help through platforms, through crowdfunding platforms.
Thank you, Mr. Varun. Sandeep, last statement.
Yes, so agree to what Varun said, nothing much to add. Thank you so much for having us here on the wonderful session. I hope a lot of people benefit from this. Plus, uh, the way forward, as you also mentioned, is all the platforms, all the stakeholders involved in this process, they have to collaborate and work together towards the common goal which we all have.
Thank you so much. And thank you very much. So we'll come to the end of this webinar and we'll come back tomorrow for self-advocacy and parent advocacy and financial solutions on humanitarian access programs and hand over to Dr. Kakuli for housekeeping announcements.
Thank you all the panelists and the participants who are there throughout all the 20 sessions, and we are remaining with 4 more sessions as Dr. Shafali has mentioned, the self-advocacy financial solutions humanitarian access program. We also have financial solutions where employee beneficiary schemes will be discussed, and definitely we will have a parent counseling where the coping strategies would be discussed. Stay with us for rest of the sessions. You can use the same link for joining. We have put it as a for the ease of all the participants. Over to you, Dr. Shifali, for the final.
It's all being live streamed on YouTube, and the YouTube links for all are available. I'll be on our website as well as Global Gene's website. In the end, we'll put all of them under one QR code, so it can be easily accessed. And any comments and suggestions can be emailed to us, anytime. Thank you so much. I think we can sign off. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of the day.
Recording stopped.
Thank you. Have a good day. Bye-bye.